Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a special guest who's a long-time Nuggets News follower, one of our regular contributors in the group if you're a premium member, a trader, and he's got some, different thoughts on where we are in the market in terms of has it topped and what are those signals and how this cycle's different. So I'm really looking forward to having a back and forward chat today with Tom. How are you, Tom?
Yeah, good mate. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Now you've got an interesting, business and personal life background. So, give us a quick rundown of that before we dive into your thoughts on crypto.
Yeah, sure. I got into the space in 2017 and just never left, mate. Fell in love with it. Saw the potential, right? The more you dig, the deeper you dig, the more you realize the whole system is either going to completely suck in just liquidity forever, or back in 2017, it's going to suck in liquidity forever, or it's going to fail. And so every day I've just watched it pass. I've been getting sucked in more and more. And it just, yeah, it captivated me. I basically went full time in about 2020. I probably spent the 4 years from 2017 to 2021 just really doing the right things. Like I stopped drinking for like 2.5 years just because I knew that the price is going to explode. So every $10 pint of beer in my head was $100. And so it was like going through that phase of I really want to give this a red hot crack. It's a massive opportunity. So just got absolutely obsessed with it. I was modeling when I was younger. I was living in New York for about 10 years and used finance as a way to transition out of that. And now leaning a lot into the mental health space, community stuff, helping people deal. I'm working on a podcast which is launching soon called The Happiness Puzzle, which is about the different aspects of life to make you happier. So that's a bit about me.
Yeah, fascinating. And I think so many people in crypto are also into the natural health side of things. I really like the mindset that people come into crypto, or the open mindedness that crypto maybe teaches people that a lot of the system isn't the way that we're taught. And then I think that
Yeah.
opens people's eyes to all other aspects of life. So I'm looking forward to chatting maybe about that a bit at the end as well. But so let's dive in. The reason you reached out was, hey, I don't think this cycle's maybe going to be as easy as people think. It's had a pretty good run, and maybe we've topped already, or the macro background with interest rates. So maybe share, your thoughts on maybe some red flags you're seeing or thinking.
Yeah, I think that to think that the classic 4 year retail bubble cycles are just going to continue, you just want people to tread carefully. Right now, I'm a bit in a bit of a split decision about whether to go up or down. But what scares me is most of the people that I talk to are like, mate, the cycle is just getting started. What are you talking about? And probably my main hypothesis is that we're going to be in a bit more of a massive sideways range. We're going to look back in sort of 2026 and realize, wow, we've been sort of hovering between 30 and maybe 100,000 US dollars per Bitcoin, maybe a bit higher, somewhere in this huge range for ages. And so if you don't take profits at the right time, then you can look back and your portfolio has been the same for 6 years. And so I just want to try and encourage people to step back and just looking at Bitcoin, going from 15,000 to 72,000 is like more than a times five. So there's people that absolutely loaded up in that accumulation zone. Of course, they're going to distribute now. And one of the main things that concerns me is the degree of slope in the chart. Like we went straight from 40 to 73, and we pretty much went straight from 20 to 40. We're already in that. If you look at every time Bitcoin's slope is like that, it's just not sustainable, and it's always followed up with a massive correction. And so I'm looking at this wave right now. I'm not a big Elliott wave guy, but I do like the ideas behind it. And I'm looking at this first wave as an impulse wave up. And impulse waves are usually followed by a really hectic, sharp, deep correction. And so whether we're already in that correction or not, I'm not 100%, but I want people to open their eyes to the possibility that we could get smashed. And if we're going to get smashed, are you going to be protected, or is it going to be 2022 all over again?
Yeah, okay. And before we maybe break down and I'll rebuttal some of these things individually, how does that thesis affect, say, Ethereum or altcoins? And maybe then we'll talk about meme coins a bit after that.
Yeah, so I think, looking at the charts, some of the charts look like they're about to explode, right? If Ethereum can pop past that sort of $4,100 level, break into new all-time highs, go into price discovery. It's definitely possible. The market doesn't always give you what you want, but I'm not going to deny it. There's a lot of altcoin charts that look fantastic, and I've still got exposure to the market, and I'm happy to head back in if certain structures are broken to the upside. I think another key thing I'd love to touch on with you is that as this market evolves, it's probably going to evolve similar to the NASDAQ, where there is like 4, 5, 6, 7 projects that start to really pull away and everything else kind of fizzles out. If we look at, how many people are watching this channel have actually used dApps on Cardano, or not having a go at Cardano, but like there's a lot of stuff that just still has incredible valuations for a very little use case.
Yeah.
And I think the next phase of this S curve of adoption, a lot of the stuff that isn't actually playing a role in evolving society or getting to be used in households regularly, they're going to fizzle out. And so that being cautious with what projects you're holding is just so important.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with the couple of points you've said there. So one of my theses is that the markets are now to the market cap, in the trillions, where they are mature and they are going to start trading like indexes, like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, as you just mentioned. And so I think part of that is driven by how much influence the ETFs are going to have and the rebalancing. So people that put in 3%, as you say, if they got in 35, 40, and the Bitcoin doubles to 80, their fund manager is going to rebalance them. So I think that will smooth out some of the growth if we continue higher. But if you look at the S&P 500, that has just grind higher basically for 10 years. And it has these pullbacks along the way that are sharp and, maybe 30%, 10% here or there. But because liquidity and so much money printing is just always happening, it tends to just follow that general liquidity as the better place to be. So the other thing you said there is top 5, tech stocks or whatever, they just keep growing and growing. I tend to agree with that as well. So something like Stacks, that's the largest Bitcoin, say, DeFi ecosystem, that's just got the Grayscale have come out and said they're going to have the Stacks Grayscale fund. So I tend to agree that good projects with all that capital locked up and that's unlocking Bitcoin liquidity, as Bitcoin's now in the trillions. So the projects that have hundreds of billions locked up and people are borrowing against their Bitcoin through the Stacks ecosystem or whatnot and actually accumulating fees, it's a bit like having revenue. It's real versus maybe something, I know a lot of people are still pretty bullish on, say, XRP or Cardano, as you say, but if the rubber doesn't hit the road sooner or later, how can these things maintain these tens of billions valuation when other projects are doing real things with real revenue? So I guess that's a couple of things I do agree with. And also probably the big one is, or do you want to talk on any of that first?
I tend to agree with the balancing out of the incline of the market, of the cycles. And I think that after this impulse wave up, I'm pretty strongly convicted that at some point it's going to be something savage that comes and whips everybody. I think after that correction, we get that S&P style grind that goes for a really long time, and it's load your bags up and then hold on for ages in the right projects. And I think that, so I think that's going to smooth the curve out as well with the fund managers holding, rebalancing. Yeah, you can even tell right now, there's not as many people, retail investors, that are getting excited by the market. There's not a lot piling in. It is a lot of institutions. I think the filings in the USA showed like 1,000 institutions filed that they're already buying Bitcoin so far. So I think that's another part of it, is all markets are manipulated, right? To some degree. People that can control it, they're going to. The people that control the crypto market are changing right now. It's literally the launch of the ETFs, getting rid of CZ, getting rid of all these, sort of degen players in the space. That is part of the change of who controls the market. And so to expect it to appear the same on the chart for the next 10 years as it did the past 10 years, when the people controlling the market are changing, just something to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, like FTX going under and CZ with Binance and that kind of thing, all those exchanges made so much money, and particularly off retail altcoin trading and leverage. Now we've got BlackRock and these big fund managers that are coming in, and they don't have to list the latest altcoins like Binance and these others were doing. All they've got to do is put 1 to 3% of those trillions and trillions they manage into Bitcoin, the Ethereum ETF, and just take a clip of those fees. And so I think it's in their best interest for it just to grind higher for years and to make money off fees. I don't think it's in their best interest to say let it crash, or this, all these ETF listings become a non-event and it just sort of flops out and fizzles out. I don't see that happening at all. I think that BlackRock, that control the world, basically can make the most money off just managing clients' funds and putting them in and taking a clip.
Absolutely. Yeah. And looking at the current price of the markets right now, one of the ways that I traded 2021 was looking at 2017. And as Bitcoin passed its previous all-time high, right? As it went past $20,000 on like December 16th, 2020, that is pretty much exactly when the altcoin market run started. And looking back to 2017, the altcoin bull run in 2017 started when Bitcoin passed 1,160, its all-time high from 2013. Yeah. So that sentiment can really shift as Bitcoin goes into that price discovery. So right now, as Bitcoin's like teetering on 70,000, about possibly going to make a new all-time high. If that happens, I think altcoin's going to go ballistic. And looking at Bitcoin dominance chart, the Bitcoin dominance chart's just been trending up and left since sort of November 2022 or something like that. And eventually it's going to break that structure and it will give alts the run that they're after. So I'm keeping an eye on both sides of the market. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is that the way you measure a Wyckoff accumulation or distribution, you're supposed to use a point and shoot chart. And the sort of equation is the cause equals the effect. So the bigger the accumulation, the bigger the move out of it. And so if you're looking at the Bitcoin dominance chart, Wyckoff accumulation is just like a mirror image of like schematic 1 or something. That accumulation started in like, the accumulation was like 2.5 years long of a Wyckoff accumulation. So the cause was massive. So the effect should be massive. And so getting to the Bitcoin dominance that we're at now was really expected because the build-up was so big. How much further it goes, I'm not sure. But when you got 2.5 years of that pressure building and then exploding, also wouldn't surprise me if the dominance just kept on going. But there's definitely room for the alts to play catch up if the market keeps going.
Yeah, and I think with the altcoins as well, and relaying this back to, like you're saying, maybe the 5 best projects really see the most money come into them. The market's just so saturated now. So in 2017, I did that video the other day about what were the lowest price altcoins that have the highest supply, and everyone jumped on the XRPs and waves and whatever these really low priced coins were, because retail have that unit bias where they want to buy 1 million coins and they think if it ever goes to $1 kind of thing. Well, now there's thousands and thousands of coins, thousands of NFTs, all this type of thing, and we know that those very few projects, apart from the best ones, survive for a second or third cycle. And so I think when you say a lot of retail isn't excited, that's because they're still holding a lot of those bags. And I saw this in the silver market. I was right in the gold and silver world back in the day, and there was everyone saying, silver's going to pop, gold's going to pop. But you can be, these guys had to wait for silver to pop for 15 years now. And I kind of see that when retail get really excited and get all these price targets, that's what we're seeing now. And a lot of people sitting on their Cardano or XRP or anything that was like a retail bag and a retail bubble, unless that institutional money comes in and they get ETFs and whatever, there's no real reason for the big smart money to come in and buy it. Because one of the things we talked about pre-interview was, interest rates and the real economy is hitting the average man in the street. And so the retail bubbles we saw the past few cycles were, you cashed up tradies or cashed up households, and they're not cashed up at the moment. We know people's mortgage payments have doubled or tripled. So I think a lot of this bull market is going to be driven by that smart institutional money that only has to go into the few ETFs or the few best plays. So do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, I do. I really think the ETFs are going to pick the winners and losers. And I think that as a safe bet, grabbing a mixed bag ETF at some point, like the S&P or the Vanguard S&P, that sort of thing, is probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Yep. And I've just got a lot of mates that are far down the list in the top sort of 400, just like picking coins. Just got to be moved so cautiously. Don't get greedy with that because a lot of it is going to just dissipate.
Yeah, and again, the big guys, the big Wall Street money, they're not really after the 10 bagger or the 100 bagger that the retail speculator was able to get. You can play in that space in penny mining stocks or whatever, but now the market's matured. There's a lot of guys that miss out on those mining stocks, and you hear about the winners and whatever. So I really think the cycle's changed, and you've got to change with the times. So yeah, whatever that first index is, whether it's just the top 10 coins or Bitcoin, Ethereum, stacks, if that's the best Bitcoin DeFi play, whatever. I just think that that's where that money and that growth is going to come. It doesn't have to be too fancy. Then they don't have to make things fancy to take a clip and make money off their clients through fees.
Yeah. Hey, mate, I've got a chart that I never really see people talk about, and it helped me accumulate massively at the bottom. I'd love to show you it. And I'm still trying to map out, I'm trying to use it to forecast. So I'd love to walk you through what I'm looking at and see if we can help people get some good entries and exits over the next few years.
Awesome. Have you got it there ready to show on screen? If you bring it up and then just down the bottom, click on share screen, and then it'll ask you to share your entire window, and it should come up on mine for everyone at home.
Get the BLX chart up, and I'll clear everything off it. All right, cool. So just trying to find you now, mate. What's the tab called again?
So share screen down the bottom, that button in the middle of the whereby chat.
I can't even see where you are, mate. Hold on one sec. Oh, there it is. Sorry.
No, you're right.
Down the bottom, share.
Yeah, and then click on entire screen when it asks you what you want to share.
Allow to share screen. Let me know if that worked, mate.
No, it hasn't worked yet. That's all right. I can edit this out later as well, by the way. But so when you click on share, what pops up?
Allow to share window, allow to share screen.
Yep. So share your window.
Share window.
Yep. And then change whatever tab you're on to like your trading view or whatever. Yeah. Okay. So now.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So trading view is. All right. So BLX full history. There's just some psycho trend lines that once I saw these, I just could never unsee them. And I just want to walk you through them because they still haven't failed yet. And I use these along with a whole bunch of other indicators, whether that's the sentiment, obviously the fundamentals, and a ton of technicals to try and gauge what I'm doing. But this is one of the pillars of my trading strategy, and it was flawless back in November. So it's basically the overall thing is that support lines become where we capitulate through, which is where we top out later. And then there's some more stuff that I'll add to it afterwards. So it's something like it gets clearer as we go through, but there's like a little support line through here for this cycle. That is where we capitulate through. And if we drag it forward, that is where we end up topping in the future cycles. So this first year is by far the least clear out of all the years, but essentially support, capitulate, top. We start doing that for the next cycles. It starts to get a bit wild. We've got the support line here, which is where we capitulate through, which is eventually where we top out in the next cycle. And this just happens over and over and over, right? Support all the way through there, clear as day and night. Drag that through. It's where we capitulate through, and then we can't get above that in the following cycle. Super clean. And that is okay. So if I'm trying to look at this current cycle, what I've originally drawn out was that is our support line for the previous cycle. So if we drag that forward, that should be where we could never get above again in the future, right? Literally hasn't failed. Support, capitulate, top of the cycle. What I find interesting about this is that if you drag these trend lines back further, it's actually where we compress into in the previous cycle, and then when we pop out of it is when the exponential sort of market really kicks off, and that's the same as all of them. So if we drag like this one back, yeah, it's literally where we compressed into in the previous cycle, then we popped out of it. And I think it's even the same as, where's the other one? That one. Yeah, I mean, you start to go back when Bitcoin's $1 for each one, but that's essentially what I was looking at. So when I was trying to pick the bottom, I realized that we should have some sort of range that we compressed into in the previous cycle, which to me looks like it's that before we popped off. So then if we drag that forward, then it's like, all right, cool, that should end up being our support line, which it was. And this was massive, right? As we went through here, when we lost this line, I had an absolute panic attack. And then it was like Jan 1st, Jan 2nd that we popped back above that. And it was unbelievable. The retest here, the huge fucking longs in these points it was just an absolute game changer. And so, yeah, I've been using that as like an overall base. If we end up getting towards this upper trend line, why would we go above it? We've never gone above the previous cycle's support line in our entire history. So if we went on a direct line straight up right now, I bet my left foot we couldn't get above 130,000. But something that concerned me is, what if I get this line wrong, right? And so when I saw us hit this peak over here, I was like, am I drawing that line wrong? And I started to just play with other lines, which I don't like to do because you can always draw trend lines in once. Just so you know, sorry, one sec. Just so you know, these lines here where we found the bottom on, I was drawing those lines in back in like January 2022. So it's 5 months before it actually came down here. So I'm not just adding trend lines in once they've already occurred, but going back, I'm just a bit concerned if I got the compression area wrong, and that if we dragged this forward to something like, what am I doing? Sorry, mate. Let me just switch over this. Yeah, I'm just a bit hesitant that I haven't to see if I've got this top resistance line right or wrong. And there's a couple of things which I've mapped out where that's what I was going to do. If I switch this to the monthly and then start to draw those lines in, there's a way of drawing it where it's like, oh God, was that already the top? And I think it was something like, it was weird. I went from like top straight through the sort of monthly closes like that. Nearly like that. My computer's lagging a bit, mate. I hope it's okay.
So it's a bit low. It's a bit low res on this end too. But as long as people know generally what you're talking about in that 130k top, or what are you saying the top is that we've already hit already if you draw it this way?
Yeah, if you draw it this way, which still works because it has the compression of the previous cycle. It's where we found support in that cycle. It's where we capitulated through, and I might have been drawing the trend line wrong. So I just have a feeling that there's a trend line that's running through here from the previous cycle that we just have to be cautious of. Can we get above it? And so I don't think that this would be the end of the cycle and Bitcoin just heads back down to 15,000. My main hypothesis on this is that if we have topped here, then we would come back down and retest this line. And so if you're ever watching this in the future and we're retesting this line, I think it would just be building more market structure before we'd go back up and retest the top line. And I'd like to just use this along with a bunch of other stuff. But I find this chart fascinating.
So for people at home, what's that bottom trend line? What's that sitting at to retest?
If we went straight down next month, 29,377.
Yeah.
And in a few months it'll be up at sort of 32,000. And I do find that an interesting price target, because if we zoom in, especially on the monthly like that, we just had, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 green monthly candles, there is not a lot of support there to think that it's not possible to come back down and retest this sort of market structure where we've got monthly close, monthly close, monthly close, monthly close, all these resistance levels. Like, to think that that's not an option, the main reason I wanted to chat, mate, is just for people to be cautious, because if you don't think 32 is a possibility, then you could get really caught with your pants down.
Fantastic. Well, is that everything you want to share on the screen? I'll close that for you.
Yeah, that'll do, mate. Yeah.
Cool. Fantastic. All right. No, I definitely appreciate that. And sorry for everyone at home. The chart was a little bit low res, but I think you get the idea of those trend lines and what's possible if what Tom's saying there could play out. But I think it's interesting times. I agree that it's never easy for everyone to make money, but I also think a lot of people didn't buy in the accumulation, and the FTX capitulation threw a lot of people off. And I do know people that were on the sidelines and waiting for a pullback for that whole run, that are kind of still waiting for that pullback to enter and that type of thing. So when you say that you're kind of in two minds, up or down, I think that's really healthy. If we're in the middle of a bull market, that's the way it's supposed to be. And until we get to that real peak where sort of everyone's bullish and all of a sudden, we're at 6-figure Bitcoin and people are now talking about $1 million Bitcoin this cycle, that's when I'd be really worried. But no, I really appreciate your thoughts. Any final thoughts for everyone at home?
I've got 4 rules that I like to stick by when I'm trading, and it's never take anyone's word for gospel, including your own, which leads into never go all in, never go all out. There's no point on being overly aggressive in one way or another, because it just, you're following people like Dr. Profit on Twitter. He's so aggressive with his conviction that if you follow him religiously, you would get absolutely decimated, because he got the direction wrong at 21. He got the direction wrong at 24. He's made some amazing calls. Hey, he's probably getting like 85% of his shit right. But if you take his word for gospel, you'll miss some absolutely critical moments. You'll get left on the sidelines going, when do I get back in? Because when we go from 40 to 73 in a couple of months with no pullbacks, you miss it. So the other 2 rules are, obviously, don't listen to the mainstream media. As soon as my dad starts sending me shit on Bitcoin, I know it's time to get the hell out. One thing I like to use in a bull run is, when you sell, it's forever profit unless you can get back in lower, because it's super common for people to try and overtrade the market and end up FOMOing back in later and then just getting decimated. And so when you start to think with that mindset of, all right, we're in a bull run, if I sell 10% now, am I okay with that never coming back in? Because FOMOing in later is so dangerous. So having that disciplined mindset of knowing, like, all right, I can take profits here and it might be forever profits, or if I can trade it well, I'll get back in later. But just using that to create a bit of discipline.
Awesome. I'll put any links below to your socials, Tom. I know you said you're launching your podcast soon. Anything you want to mention about that?
It's going to be called The Happiness Puzzle. And I'm sort of mapping out the 5 pillars of happiness. Identity, so things like authenticity and setting boundaries, knowing what your values are. Like, that's the whole thing on identity. Is societal conditioning is gnarly. We're put in uniforms at school. The media instills shit into us. There's billboards of models that make us feel insecure. We get told off for getting things wrong, so we become indecisive. So it's about shaking all the shit that gets laid onto us and becoming who you truly want to be. We're going to look at health. We're going to look at faith. We're going to look at community. So we've got, subtopics within those topics. It's going to be with one of my best mates, Alex Libby, 123 on Instagram, and myself is at Tom Bull on Instagram. We're just going to be having a laugh and having some fun, mate. It's always nice to counterbalance the, intenseness of staring at numbers and analyzing and playing this world game, to then stop and interact with humans and have a laugh and make sure you're looking after your mental health.
100%. Certainly something I've been taking more time to do this cycle after burning out last cycle. So really enjoyed the chat, Tom, and thanks. I hope everyone at home's enjoyed that as well, and we'll have to have you back on again in future.
Looking forward to it, mate. Take care.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Cheers.